One introduction RAWSEP view: the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove, and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view: purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, or RAWSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this RAWSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning, and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025, and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives, and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Webisode 57DHXYW October 26, 2025 AI could be creating a bubble that is inflating the market. In Webisode 57DHXYW1 AI could be creating a bubble that is inflating the market. 2 review of the book titled 1929 by Andrew Ross Sorkin and parallels between the October 1929 stock market crash and the 2025 economy. The John J. Raskob influence in 1929 is compared to the Elon Musk influence in 2025. 3 Argentina Argentines go to the polls for Ireland Leftwinger wins presidential election. 5 India cloud seeding to control pollution is being tried, but scientists say it is worthless gimmick similar to ineffectual smog towers. Headlines main content. 1 AI could be creating a bubble that is inflating the market in the opinion of author Andrew Ross Sorkin Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization AI overview journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin has stated that the economy is being propped up almost artificially by the artificial intelligence boom. The Sorkin comments describe the current economic environment. What Sorkin has actually said in an October 2025 interview for 60 Minutes. Sorkin agreed with the Lesley Stahl suggestion that the real economy might be going soft even as the market goes up, stating, "I would argue to you that the economy is being propped up almost artificially by the artificial intelligence boom." Sorkin has frequently drawn parallels between the current market and the speculative bubble that preceded the 1929 crash, citing the large amount of investment and debt flowing into the AI sector. He has called the AI surge both a gold rush or a sugar rush and warned that investors will not know which it is for a couple of years. The key distinction is that Sorkin is discussing the current economic environment and the AI boom effect. His point is that the massive investment in AI could be creating a bubble that is inflating the market, much like other speculative frenzies in history. 2 review of the book titled 1929 by Andrew Ross Sorkin and parallels between the October 1929 stock market crash and the 2025 economy. The John J. Raskob influence in 1929 is compared to the Elon Musk influence in 2025. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. 501c3 nonprofit organization AI overview in 2025. John J. The Raskob legacy of being a politically involved businessman who promoted financial access to the masses and influenced major corporations is most strongly reflected in Elon Musk. Both figures were highly ambitious and became major entrepreneurs through key financial positions. However, Raskob also shares similarities with other modern figures who wield business and political influence too. Elon Musk, according to a recent analysis in the Atlantic, number 1920s figure is as reminiscent of Musk as Raskob for several reasons. Controlling a major automaker, Raskob, like Musk, was an auto executive who wielded enormous influence over a major car company, General Motors. The Raskob influence on the stock market is compared to the Musk ability to move Tesla stock with a single tweet. Political involvement, like Musk, who has expressed strong political opinions and engaged in political endorsements. Raskob also dove into politics by becoming chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Ambitious projects. Raskob was known for his grand projects, including financing the construction of the Empire State Building. This parallels the Musk numerous and varied ventures such as SpaceX and his acquisition of Twitter X. Other modern parallels. 2b Ray Dalio. The Raskob pioneering of mutual funds and consumer credit to encourage mass investment mirrors the spirit of hedge fund founder Ray Dalio. Like Dalio, Raskob was a prominent public voice in the finance world, advising average Americans on how to get rich through investing, albeit with a different outcome during the 1929 market crash. 2c Charles Mitchell. A Guardian comparison of the 1929 crash to the financial climate today draws a parallel between Raskob and Charles Mitchell, the powerful financier of the National City Bank. Both believed that democratizing investment was critical for national progress, a sentiment echoed by modern industry players like the brokerage app Robinhood. 2d Private equity leaders. The Raskob strategies of buying undervalued companies, leveraging investments, and reorganizing corporations were revolutionary at the time and are now hallmarks of modern private equity firms. His legacy can be seen in the leaders of these firms who orchestrate large financial deals with significant market influence. 3 Argentina Argentines go to the polls amid economic crisis and Trump interference. A poor showing in the election Sunday would deal a hammer blow to Javier Milei. The radical libertarian president of Argentina, RAWSEP View 1 expert, is predicting a muddled result which will allow Milei to stay in power, but without the ability to continue to make transformative changes he has begun with his shock therapy. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian October 25, 2025. The radical libertarian leader of Argentina, Javier Milei, is facing a pivotal moment in his presidency, with voters set to deliver their verdict on his 2-year-old administration on Sunday against a backdrop of political and economic crisis and accusations that his ally Trump is meddling in the Argentine affairs. A poor showing in the midterm election Sunday would be a hammer blow to Milei, who took power in December 2023, pledging to kickstart a new era of peace and prosperity by slashing spending and inflation. Milei has had some success in taming triple-digit inflation, but in recent months the 55-year-old former TV celebrity has been buffeted by a succession of crises, including corruption scandals involving his sister and chief of staff Karina Milei and another close ally who was linked to an alleged drug trafficker and a sell-off of the Argentine currency, the peso. In August, Milei was pelted with stones by angry voters, and the following month his party La Libertad Avanza suffered a stinging defeat in the provincial election in Buenos Aires, where 40% of the 45 million citizens of Argentina live. The U.S. president, who is the most powerful foreign friend of Milei, has thrown him a lifeline in the form of a bailout that could total $40 billion, $30 billion pounds. But even Trump painted a dire picture of the stagnating economy of the South American country last week, telling reporters Argentina is fighting for its life. They are dying. Trump has warned he could axe the aid package if Milei fares poorly in the vote on Sunday, when half of the seats in the 257-member lower house are up for grabs, as well as 24 seats in the 72-member Senate. If he does not win, we are gone, Trump said last week while hosting Milei at the White House. The Trump apparent attempt to influence Argentine voters is Not his first intervention in South American politics this year. Starting in July, the U.S. president said about trying to derail the trial of his far-right ally, the former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, with a campaign of tariffs and sanctions against Brazil and its officials, but that campaign failed, boosting the political fortunes of the Brazil left-wing President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, while also failing to save Bolsonaro from a 27-year sentence for plotting a coup in Argentina. The political opponents of Milei also predict the Trump maneuvers will backfire. Itai Hagman, an economist and Peronist seeking election again to the lower house in Buenos Aires on Sunday, accused Trump of trying to extort Argentine voters with his threat to withdraw his rescue package. It is a clear interference in the internal affairs of another country, said Hagman. The Argentine people will defend their sovereignty and their democracy. They will not vote based on what the president of another country tells them, but on their own interests. And while Hagman called the Sunday elections a referendum on a libertarian and narco-capitalist experiment that was causing brutal economic and social suffering with its severe austerity measures, and had decided to delegate economic management to officials from another country, Milei allies are asking voters to be patient. We cannot solve all the problems that the country has had for 100 years in 2 years, said the main congressional candidate of the Freedom Advance Party in Córdoba, a political analyst and the director of the consultancy Zubin Córdoba, predicted voters would punish Milei for their economic hardship, with his polling showing that 60% of Argentinians could not make ends meet. The director of the Latin America program at the Stimson Center in Washington said public dissatisfaction had been building since earlier this year among voters who had been promised a period of shared prosperity if they endured the structural adjustment of Milei. If Milei does very badly, you could have a real economic and financial crisis and another run on the peso, but a muddled result was more likely, which would allow Milei to claim some success in increasing the representation of his party in Congress and enable him to see out the remaining half of his 4-year term, but make it really difficult for him to continue transforming Argentina in any sustainable way. Milei had enjoyed a long honeymoon. Despite his politically damaging budget cuts, there were not tremendous public protests. He was not beset by national strikes at union activism, but inevitably his political honeymoon would end. His was longer than that of many of his peers, especially given the shock therapy he was imposing, but it could not last forever. For Ireland Leftwinger Catherine Connolly wins Ireland presidential election by landslide. Independent pledges to be president for all after taking 63% of vote in upset. For political establishment excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, October 25, 2025. The left-wing independent candidate Catherine Connolly has a landslide election victory and been declared the next president of Ireland. She pledged to be a president for all after securing 63% of the first preference votes, a stunning result that shook the political establishment and will make her the 10th head of state of the Irish Republic. I will be a voice for peace, a voice that builds on our policy of neutrality, a voice that articulates the existential threat posed by climate change, she said at Dublin Castle on Saturday night after being declared the victor of the election held Friday. Catherine Connolly, who is the new president of Ireland, the 68-year-old former barrister, vowed to advocate for those who had no voice. Our public and democracy needs constructive questioning, she said, speaking in Irish and English. Connolly, an independent member of parliament from Galway, captured the imagination of many younger people and was backed by an alliance of left-wing opposition parties of 144,269 valid votes cast. She won 9,14143. Heather Humphreys, a former cabinet minister who ran for the ruling Fine Gael party, won 424,987 votes, or 29%, in a two-horse race. The Fianna Fáil candidate Jim Gavin had dropped out of the campaign, but his name remained on the ballot, and he won 103,568, or 7%. The Connolly triumph was marred by a turnout of 46% low by Irish standards, and 213738 spoiled or invalid votes, an unprecedented number that reflected frustration over the lack of choice in some Dublin constituencies. Up to a fifth of votes were spoiled. The presidency is a largely ceremonial office, but the Connolly victory was a stinging rebuke to the center-right government. Catherine Connolly is the outspoken left-winger set to be the next president of Ireland. Anger over a housing crisis and the cost of living campaign blunders by Fine Gael and its ruling partner Fianna Fáil, rare unity among left-wing parties, and deft use of social media combined to make Connolly a symbol of change. The prospect of Connolly succeeding President Michael D. Higgins and serving a 7-year term at Arison Uachtarane, the presidential residence, thrills supporters. She wishes to ring-fence Irish neutrality from what she calls Western militarism. The former clinical psychologist and barrister enthused young people through podcasts and posts that went viral on social media. Critics depicted Connolly as a radical who dodged awkward questions and could damage the relations of Ireland with Washington and with its European allies. Irish presidents traditionally played quiet symbolic roles, but since 1990, Mary Robinson, Mary McAleese, and Higgins have turned the office into a more visible platform. She was a marginal political figure when she declared her candidacy in July, and only small parties, the Social Democrats and People Before Profit, backed her. Labour then endorsed her, and Sinn Féin, which had decided to not run its own candidate through its formidable resources and electoral organization behind Connolly. Celebrities such as Bob Geldof, Michael Flatley, Conor McGregor, and others had expressed interest in running for president, but failed to win the political backing to get on the ballot. The Fianna Fáil candidate Gavin was a political novice who withdrew after a financial scandal imploded his campaign. Higgins, who has been president for 14 years, congratulated Connolly in a phone call. 5 India RAWSEP view. This article concludes that cloud seeding as well as smog towers do not work to contain air pollution and thus are termed as a gimmick or a snake oil solution by scientists. The PM 2.5 air pollution from solid fuel crop burning in India is similar to the solid fuel PM 2.5 air pollution from indoor residential burning in the United States. In India, trials are being conducted in Delhi. Cloud seeding ecologically friendly fireworks are Worse than no fireworks at all, just do not burn solid fuels including crop and wood to attack the problem at the source. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, The Guardian, October 24, 2025. Seeding clouds is an attempt to create clean air in the most polluted city in the world. The Bharatiya Janata Party launches first test flight as brown haze blankets city after Diwali, but experts decry the gimmick. Delhi regional government is trialing a cloud seeding experiment to induce artificial rain in an effort to clean the air in the most polluted city in the world. The Bharatiya Janata Party (BJP) has been proposing the use of cloud seeding as a way to bring the Delhi air pollution under control since it was elected to lead the regional government this year. India gate shrouded in fog. Cloud seeding involves using aircraft or drones to add to clouds particles of silver iodide, which have a structure similar to ice. Water droplets cluster around the particles, modifying the structure of the clouds and increasing the chance of precipitation. Months of unpredictable weather over the capital of India had put the cloud seeding plans of BJP on pause, but days after, the Delhi air quality once again fell into the hazardous range after Diwali festival and a thick brown haze settled over the city. The government said the scheme would finally be rolled out. The Delhi environment minister said the first trial flight, during which seeding flares were launched into the sky, was conducted on Thursday. The chief minister of the city said if conditions remain favorable, Delhi will experience its first artificial rain on October 29. People light ecologically friendly fireworks during Diwali, the Hindu festival of lights in Delhi. Experts who have studied cloud seeding say it is no panacea. It is supposed to produce more frequent and heavier rain than the clouds would otherwise release, but the effect is often small. The process also requires clouds, and they are often not present over Delhi during winter when pollution peaks. It also does not address the root causes of pollutants. Two professors at the Delhi Center for Atmospheric Sciences condemned the plan as a gimmick. It is a textbook case of science misapplied and ethics ignored, said the two professors, writing in the Hindu newspaper. They equated the plans with the smog towers that were erected in Delhi by the previous government at the cost of billions of rupees, but were found to be largely ineffectual at improving air quality. They also warned that there was little research into the long-term effects on repeated use of the chemicals used in cloud seeding, such as silver iodide or sodium chloride, on agriculture and human health. Snake oil solutions will not clear the air in Delhi or the rest of North India. Delhi has been ranked as the most polluted city in the world for more than a decade. In 2024, pollution levels caused by a deadly mix of emissions from crop burning factories and heavy traffic, which get trapped over the city when the air gets colder, rose by 6% during winter. Levels of PM 2.5 and PM 10, the fine particulate matter that causes pollution in the city, regularly go far above those seen during the famous air apocalypse in Beijing in 2013, before the Chinese government took stringent initiatives to clean the air. Headlines: The New York Times, October 26, 2025. California, Los Angeles, human trafficking. Can anyone rescue the trafficked girls of the Los Angeles L.A. Figueroa Street? The New York Times Consumer's Books, Susan Orlean offers snapshots of a high-flying career in Joyride. The New York Times Consumer's Dolls, Opinion. Labubis 8, My Daughter. The New York Times Consumer's Gifts for older adults. You asked, we answered. 19 gift ideas for older adults. Reviews by Wirecutter. Consumer's Halloween Regatta. Is that pumpkin seaworthy? No promises. The New York Times Consumer's Mothers, How I Bought Almost Nothing New When My Son Was Born. Reviews by Wirecutter. Health, Human Interest Opinion. It is great to be in my 80s. The New York Times. Iowa. In Trump-friendly Iowa, Trump policies hit hard. The New York Times. Louisiana University admissions. Tulane punished a high school after an early decision. Student backed out. The New York Times. Music opinion. Bruce Springsteen man crush. The New York Times. New York Trump conviction. Democrat Alvin Bragg seeking election again is not mentioning his best-known case. The New York Times. New York City mayoral race. As the biggest stars of the left unite behind Mamdani, a bigger test awaits. The New York Times. New York City mayoral race. Why cannot people pronounce Zoran Mamdani? The New York Times. Pets. Nobody knew this was not my dog. The New York Times. Trump actions opinion. The thread tying together everything Trump does. The New York Times. Trump ballroom opinion. Why the Trump East Wing demolition needed to happen. The New York Times. Trump ballroom. What voters think of the Trump White House ball. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts to fund tax breaks for the rich under Trump. Voice of America is down, but not out. The New York Times. Trump economy opinion. In the Trump casino economy, you will probably lose. The New York Times. Trump lawsuit sports the odd history of the row house at the center of the NBA betting scandal. The New York Times. Canada. Trump decries anti-tariff ad from Ontario, Canada that faithfully quotes Reagan's speech. The New York Times. Canada. Trump announces tariff increase on Canada over Reagan ad spat. The New York Times. Argentina. What to know about the midterm election in Argentina. The New York Times. Venezuela. How Maduro is responding to the Trump pressure on the economy of Venezuela. The New York Times. New Zealand. Nature. Take a look at rare photos of red lightning in New Zealand. The New York Times. France. Suspects in Louvre jewelry heist arrested. French authorities say. The New York Times. Sudanese paramilitaries claim control of key army garrison in Darfur. The New York Times. Asia. Trump leans into showmanship on day one of his Asia trip. The New York Times. China, the sleeper issue at the heart of the Trump trade war on China. The New York Times. China. Trump live updates. News on China trade deal framework. Asia tour and Canada tariffs. The New York Times. Headlines: The Guardian, October 26, 2025. United States presidential race 2028. I am not done. Kamala Harris says she may run for president again. Kamala Harris. The Guardian consumers e-readers, the best e-readers in the U.S. for every kind of book lover life and style. The Guardian consumers exercise workout while you work. 10 strength building office exercises you can do in every day. Clothes fitness. The Guardian consumers exercise and diet. The pressure to get your old body back is immense. The new mothers driven to weight loss jabs. Pregnancy. The Guardian consumers fashion. The Rad Pack. David Beckham leads country menswear trend. Fashion of men. The Guardian consumers journaling. Start small, keep a log picture. The end result. 17 top tips from experts on how to stay motivated. Health and well-being. The Guardian consumers order under. The stuff I cannot throw out is the stuff my parents could not throw out. Novelist and Enright on the agony of clearing her family home. Family. The Guardian consumers recipes. Food. If you use chocolate you are in crisis. The surprise ingredients being used to beat costs. Food and drink industry. The Guardian Democrats. Can Democrats harness the energy of the No Kings protests to fight Trump? U.S. politics. The Guardian Democrats' Kamala Harris suggests she is considering another presidential run. The New York Times Democrats are captive to outdated norms. It is endangering democracy. Ryan W. Powers. The Guardian Games average, but arresting games used to be the backbone of the industry. What price perfection? Games. The Guardian Hawaii. A Hawaiian princess bequeathed her inheritance to her people. The schools they set up are being sued. Hawaii. The Guardian. Medicine and science. Cholera is spreading fast, yet it can be stopped. Why have not we consigned it to history? Hakeem Hichilema and Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. The Guardian. Medicine and science. Human interest. The kindness of strangers. When I found out my cancer had spread, the woman in the next bed reached out. Life and style. The Guardian. Medicine and science. Why do we yawn? It is almost certainly not for the reason you think. Human biology. The Guardian movie star. I do not know how anyone takes themselves seriously in this job. Hollywood hotshot Glenn Powell talks to Marina Hyde. Glenn Powell. The Guardian. New Jersey officer charged after going out for pizza instead of responding to shooting. New Jersey. The Guardian. Pennsylvania. I am fearful people will die. Pennsylvania reckons with impact of Trump cuts. Pennsylvania. The Guardian. Pennsylvania city divided over Trump as it reels from economic whiplash. Pennsylvania. The Guardian. Pets. Tim Dowling. After a year of ignoring each other, the cat and the dog have declared war. Family. The Guardian. Shutdown. Federal workers squeezed as shutdown drags on. I cannot believe we are not going to get paid. U.S. federal government shutdown 2025. The Guardian. Shutdown. Food benefits set to expire for 41 million people as U.S. shutdown continues. U.S. federal government shutdown 2025. The Guardian. Texas officers heroically rescue baby pinned under car after overturned crash. Texas. The Guardian. Trump actions bipartisan action in reply as Trump cracks down. Faith groups step up for immigrants. What has happened to our heart? U.S. immigration. The Guardian. Trump actions January 6. Trump told Pence he will go down as a wimp in January 6 phone call book, says Trump. The Guardian. Trump actions. The tragic change a single year has made in America. Margaret Sullivan. The Guardian. Shutdown. The Trump move to pay troops amid shutdown sets dangerous precedent. Experts warn U.S. military. The Guardian. Trump ballroom. Seth Meyers on the Trump White House ballroom. This could not be any more of a bait and switch late night TV roundup. The Guardian. Trump economy. Sexism. Girl boss or trad wife. An economist on how a workforce built for men has failed women work and careers. The Guardian. Trump lack of gun control. Gun violence prevention groups disqualified from grants built around their work. Trump administration. The Guardian. Antarctica. Nature. Antarctic krill. How did a paperclip-sized crustacean cause a diplomatic row? And why are they so important? Antarctica. The Guardian. Argentina goes to polls amid economic crisis and Trump interference. Javier Milei. The Guardian. Argentina and the United States. Do populists always crash the economy? Economics. The Guardian. Ireland Leftwinger Catherine Connolly wins Ireland presidential election by landslide. Ireland. The Guardian. United Kingdom. London. Far-right history is repeating itself. The fight against far-right in the East End of London goes on. The Guardian. United Kingdom against Trump dining across the divide. I said Trump is a bit of a despot and should not have had a state visit to the UK. Life and style. The Guardian. The Netherlands. I was contaminated. Study reveals how hard it is to avoid pesticide exposure. Pesticides. The Guardian. France. French police arrest 2 men over 88 million euro Louvre jewel heist. France. The Guardian. Germany. They disappeared when the wall came down. German author Jenny Erpenbeck on the objects that contain vast histories. Fiction. The Guardian. Ukraine. There is no life. The slow demise of Kupiansk reflects the fate of cities on the Ukraine front line. Ukraine. The Guardian. Ukraine. Russia arrests Ukrainian biologist for backing curbs on Antarctic krill fishing. Antarctica. The Guardian. Russia. Trump sanctions have swift impact, but will world stop buying Russian oil and gas? Energy industry. The Guardian. India trials Delhi cloud seeding to clean air in the most polluted city in the world. Delhi. The Guardian. Africa. Public transport every day is a fight. Join the commuters in the rapidly growing cities of Africa. The Guardian. Headlines. Other media. October 26, 2025. Colorado and Virginia. 2 more blue states could redraw their congressional maps. What to know? Newsweek. Medicine and science. Government regulation history. In the 1960s, the Francis Oldham Kelsey refusal to approve thalidomide changed medical history. France. After the Louvre Museum heist. A closer look at what is in it for the thieves. NPR. France. French police arrest 2 Louvre jewel heist suspects amid manhunt. Headlines. The New York Times. October 25, 2025. Air pollution business. A Trump Environmental Protection Administration EPA plan to kill a major climate rule is worrying business leaders. The New York Times. Air pollution business. Exxon sues California over new climate disclosure laws. The New York Times. Business automation. The robots fueling the Amazon automation. The New York Times. Business human interest. 7 a.m. is too early for a meeting, right? The New York Times. California and New Jersey. Trump Justice Department will monitor elections in California and New Jersey. The New York Times. California. We traveled to real California. That one battle after another. Imagine. The New York Times. Consumer CD players. The 3 best CD players of 2025. Reviews by Wirecutter. Consumers. Mother's opinion. What I would tell a younger version of myself about having a baby. The New York Times. Consumers. Recipes. Drink pumpkin spice lattes. A favorite U.S. fall drink. Divide Europe. The New York Times. Consumers. Recipes. Food. This easy protein packed chili will fuel your Halloween. The New York Times. Consumers. Recipes. Food. Double chocolate chip cookies recipe. Democrats debate shows are having a moment. Here come the Democrats. The New York Times. Democrats. Former Biden and Senate counsel to lead progressive legal group. The New York Times. Florida healthcare costs. In Florida, Obamacare price hikes pose an outsized threat. The New York Times. Games a mind-blowing adventure with a walking lighthouse. The New York Times. Human interest. What to do when a person will not stop talking. The New York Times. Internet starring in videos is no longer a job just for the social media team. The New York Times. Internet. What is Group 7 on TikTok? Sophia James explains her exclusive club. The New York Times. Internet. What is wrong with your computer? Reviews by Wirecutter. Internet outage. AWS cloud computing outage left smart bed customers without sleep. The New York Times. Kansas. Nature helping to save the bees with plants in Kansas. The New York Times. Medicine and science. Trump FDA approves new menopause drug to treat hot flashes and night sweats. The New York Times. Medicine and science and fight against malaria. An unexpected and snuggly shield. The New York Times. Movie win. Hollywood tries to Depict Broadway genius. The results rarely sing. The New York Times. Music. See, otters and museums are feeling the Taylor Swift Midas touch. The New York Times. Musk inquiry into death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez continues after body found in the Tesla D4VD. What to know. The New York Times. New Jersey Rutgers fraternity is closed after student is injured in hazing episode. The New York Times. New Jersey. The Trump threat to Hudson River tunnels becomes focus of New Jersey election. The New York Times. New York City parks the slow death of the New York City public bench. The New York Times. New York City speed limits are taking the wind out of the exhilarating commutes of cyclists. The New York Times. New York City mayoral race. Is it subsidizing the rich to make buses and childcare free for all? The New York Times. New York City mayoral race. Opinion. Mamdani and Cuomo debated housing policy, but both need to think bigger. The New York Times. New York City mayoral race. Opinion. Will New York voters choose to speed up housing construction? The New York Times. New York City mayoral race with dire picture of a Mamdani mayoralty. Cuomo plays to fears of voters. The New York Times. Shutdown. How Trump is getting some workers paid despite the shutdown. The New York Times. Shutdown. Republicans keeping the House. Absent Johnson marginalizes Congress and himself. The New York Times. Shut down the man at the center of the Trump $20 billion lifeline. The New York Times. Shut down Timothy Mellon is donor who gave $130 million to pay troops during shutdown. The New York Times. Shut down. Trump administration will not use emergency funds for food stamps during shutdown. The New York Times. Trump actions. Opinion. The Trump path of destruction is far-reaching. The New York Times. Trump actions as Vance takes on a forceful new role. His positions are shifting. The New York Times. Trump actions ban and claims there is a plan for Trump to run for a third term. The New York Times. Trump ballroom. Opinion. The corruption behind the Trump East Wing demolition. The New York Times. Trump ballroom renovations at the White House are not unusual, but the Trump makeover is the New York Times. Trump ballroom Rockwell paintings of the White House, where they long resided. Head to auction. The New York Times. Trump ballroom. The Trump plans for the East Wing keep changing. Here is a look. The New York Times. Trump ballroom. The White House movie theater is among the East Wing rubble. The New York Times. Trump ballroom. White House East Wing. See before the Trump renovations and plans for his ballroom. The New York Times. Trump economy bonds should be boring, but they have been on a roller coaster. The New York Times. Trump economy. We are counting on big tech to invent the future. That is a bad bet. The New York Times. Trump Epstein fallout. Opinion. The privilege of Prince Andrew. The New York Times. Trump lawsuits against his enemies for personal reasons. New York. In Letitia James case, some black women see their own family sacrifices. The New York Times. Trump military. The Trump son is poised to profit from Pentagon drone proposal. The New York Times. Virginia Democrats plan to redraw House maps and redistricting push. The New York Times. Canada facing lost trade with the U.S. Carney heads to Asia. The New York Times. Canada. Trump ends trade talks with Canada after anti-tariff TV ad airs. The New York Times. Brazil vegan menu. Why a chef in Brazil could not stomach a menu request for the United King Prince William event. The New York Times. Brazil. Where to eat, sleep, and shop in Salvador, Brazil. The New York Times. Venezuela. Trump strikes a mystery in Trinidad as bodies wash ashore after U.S. strikes. The New York Times. Venezuela. Opinion. Trump wants an easy win in Venezuela. He will not get one. The New York Times. Venezuela. Republicans who have rarely opposed Trump raise questions about his drug war. The New York Times. Venezuela. Trump supporters are uneasy about military actions against Venezuela. The New York Times. France. Medicine and science. Historical data. DNA identifies 2 bacterial killers that stalked the army of Napoleon. The New York Times. France. It has got to be an inside job. Jewelry thieves weigh in on Louvre heist. The New York Times. Ukraine. The Trump-Russia sanctions shift war dynamics to the energy front. The New York Times. Africa presidents are limited to 2 terms. He is running for his 4th. The New York Times. Asia caught in the middle faces Trump and the Xi tug of war. The New York Times. Asia. The Trump Asia tour deals diplomacy in a meeting with Xi. The New York Times. China. The U.S. struggles to break out from the China grip on rare earths. The New York Times. China. Trump leaves behind a reeling Washington to chase a deal with China. The New York Times. Indonesia. The Indonesian free food program that has sickened thousands. The New York Times. Headlines. The Guardian. October 26, 2025. Artificial intelligence. AI models may be developing their own survival drive. Researchers say artificial intelligence AI. The Guardian. California. How screw Trump messaging may help the California Proposition 50 prevail. California. The Guardian. California. Trump was planning to send troops to San Francisco. Now he is not here. Is why Joe Ashkenazi. The Guardian. Consumers hair transplants for women. Every time I step outside, the first thing on my mind is my forehead. The women getting hair transplants. Hair loss. The Guardian. Internet. Amazon strategized about keeping the full water use secret of its data centers. Leaked document shows technology. The Guardian. Medicine and science. How do hot air balloons steer and what makes frogs ribbit. The quiz for kids. Family. The Guardian. New York City mayoral race. Early voting starts for New York mayoral and New Jersey gubernatorial races. U.S. politics. The Guardian. New York City mayoral race. Hakeem Jeffries endorses Zoran Mamdani for New York City mayor. Hakeem Jeffries. The Guardian. RFK Jr. lack of medicine and science. RFK Jr. to urge Americans to eat more saturated fats. Alarming health experts. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The Guardian. Shut down Americans brace for food stamps to run out. The greatest hunger catastrophe since the Great Depression. U.S. federal government shutdown 2020. 5. The Guardian. Shut down fears of heat rationing for millions in U.S. as shutdown delays energy aid. U.S. News. The Guardian. Shutdown federal workers squeezed as shutdown drags on. I cannot believe we are not going to get paid. U.S. federal government shutdown 2025. The Guardian. Shutdown. Trump backer Timothy Mellon identified as donor of $130 million for U.S. troop pay during government shutdown. U.S. federal government shutdown 2025. The Guardian. Trump ballroom. Why is Trump demolishing the East Wing of the White House? Because he wants to. Arwa Madawi. The Guardian. Trump Epstein fallout. United Kingdom. How does he pay for it all? The mystery of the money of Prince Andrew. The Guardian. Venezuela. Trump plans land strikes against alleged drug traffickers from Venezuela. U.S. foreign policy. The Guardian. Venezuela. Why is Trump calling himself the president of peace, but aiming to topple the Venezuelan regime? U.S. foreign policy. The Guardian. South Korea. Trump says he is open to meeting Kim Jong-un as he embarks on whirlwind Asia tour. U.S. foreign policy. The Guardian.
Red Green Fox here. The quick red green fox jumped over the barriers to clean air. Red Green Fox here. Ready to sing to you the the names of the 2025 major wood-burning biomass industry subsidy opponents. 1. Biofuel Watch. 2. Bulkley Valley Stewardship Coalition of British Columbia, Canada. 3. Comite Schoen Luft, which means Beautiful Air Committee in German. 4. Dogwood Alliance. 5. Equity Group Foundation, nicknamed EGF. 6. Environmental Paper Network, nicknamed EPN. 7. Natural Resources Defense Council, nicknamed NRDC. 8. Prakaunia Narzeks Wysystkich Istit, which means Workshop for All Beings in Polish. 9. Rachel Carson Council. 10 Solutions for Our Climate, nicknamed SFOC.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. RAWSEP view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom. The Eco-Design Wood Stove International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.